OK, we're just leaving that story there because the Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, has just begun speaking to the media in Melbourne.
Policy agenda to put innovation at the heart of government policy, to take advantage of the creative entrepreneurial talent that we have in this country, and to find new ways to provide jobs for the future in new industries, in the high-tech, high-value industries, including advanced manufacturing. And here at this centre, where the Australian government has invested $3 million, we'll see a collaboration between businesses, governments, the private sector, universities, for job creation, skills training, education, and not only for the people of Ringwood, but across the eastern metropolitan part of Melbourne. So it's a very exciting day to be here, and looking forward to seeing the rest of the redevelopment, including the retail and dining outlets, which makes this one of the most sophisticated shopping centres and redevelopments that I've seen in a long time.
Just on the South China Sea, will Australia at any stage join the United States in furthering its exploration in that area around the 12 nautical miles of the man-made island?
We've not been asked to join the United States, and we have no plans to do other than what we already do, and that is traverse international waters in accordance with international law. Indeed, we have joint exercises with the United States Navy, we have joint exercises with the Chinese Navy. So we will continue to operate in that region. We believe fundamentally in the principle of freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight, and we will continue to do that in accordance with international law.
And just on the cloud passports as well, how will this change travel and security?
This is an option that we're considering as part of an ideas challenge that we had within the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. We asked all of our employees across the world, because Australia has about 110 overseas posts, we asked all of our staff to come up with new and creative ideas for the department to embrace. And one of the ideas was turning the passport chip into a purely digital one. And it's a form of cloud passport that we're just trialling at present. We're in discussions with New Zealand, and if we're able to put in place the appropriate requirements, including security, then it's something we'd like to trial and implement.
Is this set to boost security and the ability for people to maintain security on their passports?
Well, obviously that's the fundamental issue. We wouldn't do it if it were not able to be secure. So we're just trialling new ideas, and we're just in the early stages of discussion. But this is putting innovation at the heart of all we do. Just doing the same old thing year after year after year doesn't make Australia a more productive, innovative, creative and prosperous country. So we are embracing new ideas, not for the sake of it, but in order to grow our economy, to make it easier to do business in Australia, to create more jobs. And the idea of a cloud passport would of course be grounded in absolute security. Australia prides itself on having one of the most secure passports in the world. But by embracing and harnessing new technologies, we might be able to do even better.
Have Australian officials committed transnational crimes by paying people smugglers to turn back boats?
Our Australian officials operate in accordance with domestic Australian law and in accordance with our international obligations.
So what's your reaction to the Amnesty International report?
I reject it.
On what grounds?
Australian officials are acting in accordance with Australian domestic law and in accordance with Australia's international obligations. I think this is an extraordinarily important redevelopment, not only for the local community but across this entire region, indeed for the state of Victoria. It is bringing together the best in innovative design, the private sector, the public sector at all levels of government, to create amenities and locations that will drive innovation, drive economic growth and drive jobs. And I might ask the member for Deakin to say a few words about what it means to his electorate.
Well, thanks, Julie. It's absolutely fantastic that you could be here today to open the Regional Centre for Knowledge and Innovation. This will be a hub that brings services of governments of all levels, services from particular parts of the private sector together to help our entrepreneurs, people who want to examine the opportunities of a startup, and will ensure that they have all the support that they need to get a great idea off the ground. Because one of the pieces of feedback that I think everybody in the government receives is that We have people who come up with great ideas, but how do we actually move those great ideas to commercialise them, to enable them to create the jobs and the economic prosperity that we all want? So this centre will go part of the way to doing that. There's a lot of work that needs to happen now, but I'm so happy that we were able to contribute $3 million for the Regional Centre for Knowledge and Innovation, and I'm even happier that the Foreign Minister could be here today, because I think in many respects you embody what we're trying to do here, and I think it's going to be a very exciting time for the eastern suburbs of Melbourne.
Thank you, Michael. I've actually adopted the phrase fashion diplomacy because the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Australian Fashion Chamber so that we can promote Australian designers, Australian manufacturers, the whole fashion industry. It's worth about $12 billion each year to the Australian economy. Over 220,000 people are employed by the Australian fashion industry, and I'm delighted to hear that even more will be employed in the fashion retail stores here in Ringwood. So it is an important part of our creative economy, and we're doing all we can as a government and through my department to promote the stylish, innovative, creative Australian fashion industry on the world stage. And I hope that even more fashion designers who are involved in spring racing will have an opportunity to feature and be showcased on the world stage.
Just finally, mining is also a big import export. Do you think there is public support for processing uranium in terms of storing the rods here once they reach the nuclear?
We have one of the largest reserves of uranium in the world, and we export our uranium around the world for peaceful civilian purposes so that other countries can embrace nuclear power, which is a virtually zero emissions technology. And so, for example, we've recently concluded a civilian nuclear power arrangement with India so that India can embrace nuclear power, which is a virtually zero emissions technology. So not only is it bringing electricity, energy, power to the people of India, it's also contributing in a very positive way to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So as a country that supplies uranium to the world, we should take some responsibility for storing nuclear waste. We have a nuclear research operation at Lucas Heights. We need to be able to store the waste that comes from that. And when I talk about nuclear waste, we're talking about everyday items that are used in the production of nuclear medicines. So Australia should take responsibility, and I'm delighted that the South Australian Government has a Royal Commission underway into nuclear power and the whole nuclear fuel cycle.
It's a bit of a tough sell for government, though, isn't it? I mean, no one has them stored in their backyard.
Well, that's why the Royal Commission that has been conducted by the South Australian Government will be a very useful platform for this kind of debate, and I know a number of people and businesses and entities have made submissions to that Royal Commission, so we certainly await its findings with great interest.
Just finally, I just wanted to ask if you've got any comment about Tony Abbott's recent speech in Europe about advising them not to open their hearts and borders to refugees. Does this mean that Australia was wrong in accepting 12,000 refugees?
Now, Australia, having got our own borders under control after Labor's disastrous border protection regime, which weakened our borders and brought 50,000 people via the people smuggling trade to Australia, and about 1,200 people died at sea under the previous Labor government. We've now put in place a very appropriate and strong and tough border protection regime that dismantled the people smuggling trade. That now enables us to expand our humanitarian and refugee intake, which is already 13,750 per annum, going up to about 18,500 in years to come. But we have been able to offer an additional 12,000 humanitarian and refugee places to some of the ethnic and religious minorities who are fleeing from the humanitarian crisis in Syria. It was the right thing to do, and because we now have control of our border protection regime, we're able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was live from Melbourne. The Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, emphasising innovation once again, the word of the moment for the government. The Prime Minister was in Tasmania earlier today saying there was nothing more important. And the Foreign Minister rejecting that amnesty report published this morning, saying which had claimed asylum seekers had been threatened and people smugglers paid to turn back boats. Alicia Barry joins us now with business and finance.